welcome to YHELP's Talks with Taylor. Today we are with Kelly Davis of Mental Health America talking to us about mental health. Hi. So tell us about yourself and your organization.
Yeah, so I'm Kelly Davis. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Associate Vice President of Peer and Youth Advocacy at Mental Health America. So Mental Health America is the nation's largest, or the nation's oldest, and by some metrics, largest mental health advocacy organization. We were founded in 1909 by a man named Clifford Beers, who was in and out of the mental health hospitals of the time and believed that we really needed to make a difference, especially led by people with lived experience. So we do policy, we do public education, including founding Mental Health Month in the late 1950s. And we also have a large mental health screening program that I can talk about a little bit later around some of the things that teens can use through Mental Health America. And my work particularly focuses on peer support, the expansion of peer support programs and services, and then youth and young adult leadership. So how can we empower young people with the tools and information they need to be involved in mental health policy, but also to lead their own mental health programs, whether that's a peer support program, a mental health awareness initiative, a nonprofit, all different things, really focused on the answers coming from people closest to the issues and impact.
How do you define mental health and why is it important?
So mental health is often defined as your psychological and emotional well-being. So essentially how you feel and how you think. And mental health is important because it affects every aspect of our lives. Really, how you're feeling and how you're thinking impacts how you're doing at school, can impact your physical health. You know, for example, folks who struggle with depression may have difficulty, maintaining just daily wellness practices, because when you're experiencing depression, it can be hard to do things even when they're important to you. Influences, with anxiety. It can be hard to make friends. So there's a lot of different ways that mental health challenges can impact you, but also mental health well-being can improve your life and your emotions and your relationships with other people.
Why do you think there's a stigma against mental health?
I think there's a stigma against health for a number of reasons. So I think one is that we often don't talk about it. Because the history of, it's often something that people don't understand. And when they don't understand something, they often just kind of brush it under the rug, or maybe don't want to seem different or want to seem like their needs are different from other people. And I think historically, there's been a lot of harm done to people with mental health challenges in particular, in the kind of way that we used to have the state-run psychiatric hospitals, like our founder was in. But also, I think we all kind of want to have this space that we're not vulnerable, that we're doing well, and that sometimes, like in the US culture particularly, that we don't need help from other people. So I think admitting that you have a mental health challenge can be confusing to other people because they don't know what that is, but it can also be really vulnerable because folks want to make sure it's hard to feel different, right? And we often don't want to feel different from the people around us.
What are the most common mental health disorders that affect teens?
So for teens, big mental health challenges are depression and anxiety are really common among young people, and other things like self-harm, eating disorders, their PTSD. But I think the biggest thing that we see through research, but also through our mental health screening program that Mental Health America runs, is that a lot of young people are really struggling with depression and anxiety. So feeling overwhelmed, not, feeling like it's hard to do the things that you care about, or, having excessive worries that things that are in your life. And being a young person right now is really hard. Being a young person is always hard, but right now with all the things that are happening in the world and all the things that teens have to deal with, like school shootings, violence in their communities, fear about what you're going to do post-school, how competitive college is. You have to be super well-rounded. So I think that there's a lot of really serious challenges that young people are facing. And I think often adults dismiss them as serious things because they got through it, and young people's challenges aren't often taken that seriously when it's really hard to be a young person, and it's especially hard to be a young person now.
What can someone do if they feel like they're having mental health challenges?
So one of the tools that we offer through Mental Health is our online mental health screening program. So it's we've had over 6.5 million people use it. 2/3 of them are under 24, so it's predominantly young people. And it has different mental health, basically tests. So for depression, anxiety, PTSD, eating disorders, and they're the same questions that your doctor would ask you. And if you go and take the mental health screen, it can be a good way to check in on how you're doing. But we also have tools that can help guide young people in having conversations with their parents, with their teachers, with their friends, people around them. And in addition to being able to check in on your mental health through the screening platform, we also have, based on what young people and all of the screeners told us they wanted, a screening to supports platform. So in addition to these mental health tests, folks can learn more about mental health conditions, mental health treatment, some typical challenges that people are dealing with that aren't necessarily mental health specific. So, thinking about, will things ever get better? I feel lonely, kind of typical things that impact our mental health. In addition, it has connection to peers, so communities of other people with shared experience, and do-it-yourself self-help tools. One of the things that I've seen a lot in my work with young people is that many young people really want tools to explore their mental health and well-being personally, in addition to kind of other formal mental health resources. So we also have those for folks as well.
How can you support someone close to you that has mental health challenges?
I think one of the biggest things that I have seen and heard and learned in my work in peer support is often when somebody comes to us and says they're struggling, our first reaction is to try to solve their problem. And oftentimes when people are struggling with their mental health, what they really want is somebody to listen. So I think listening from a place of non-judgment and a place of caring to how your friend is doing, or how the person around you is doing, is a really good start. Often people, because stigma, keep a lot of things to themselves. So there's a lot of bravery in reaching out and sharing if you're not doing well to the people around you. And then in addition, you can use resources like our mental health screening program or our resources on mhanational.org to learn more about how to have conversations with people and to navigate what resources are available. So we have kind of a guide to, whether your friend is just kind of exploring their mental health or whether they're in crisis, and at each stage in between, resources that are appropriate that you can refer them to. But I think as a starting point, just listening and then saying, you may be expressing concern or saying, there's people who can help with folks who are having some of these challenges. Would you be interested in talking to an adult or exploring some of the resources that are available online, just to see maybe if you're interested in some things that could help you, but making sure that you're asking and just listening before trying to solve a problem. Because a lot of times we don't, just because somebody's struggling doesn't mean they need to be fixed, right? And we don't want to shut down our friends when they share how they're feeling, to make them feel like, I should just deal with this on my own.
What should someone do if they're thinking of harming themselves?
So if you're thinking of harming yourself, there's a few resources. I think the most common one that we refer young people to is crisis text line. So if you text home to 741-741, you can talk any time of the day to a trained crisis counselor via text message. So it's a really good resource for if you're struggling, if you just want to talk to somebody. But I think too, certainly telling an adult, because a lot of these challenges, if you're thinking about harming yourself or you're thinking about suicide, there are resources that can help. And it's important that if you're having those feelings, to reach out and say that you're struggling, because it gets better. Part of the reason why I do this work is because I have lived experience and I had a lot of mental health challenges growing up, and I struggled a lot with suicidal thoughts. And I think that working with people, not only, mental health professionals, but even looking up stories online of people who overcame similar things, whether that's suicide or depression, suicidal thoughts or depression or anxiety, can really be inspirational and give folks hope that it does get better, and that, how you're feeling right now doesn't necessarily mean you'll feel like that for the rest of your life.
What advice would you give to a teen that's ashamed or embarrassed to seek help?
I think something that was most powerful for me is what I just described, where it was finding people who I admired and respected and thought were cool, who were open about their mental health, and kind of reading their story and how they did it. And I think taking the first step and reaching out for help is super great, right? It's really hard to ask for help. It's really hard to admit that you're struggling with your mental health, and making sure that you're reaching out to somebody you trust, even if it's the crisis text line or a community online to talk about, hey, here's some of the things that I'm scared of. How have other people dealt with this? And getting some tips from other people. If you're not comfortable with talking to people in your life about it yet, even going online and seeing some of the tips and resources that people have, I think are really important. And then just knowing you're not alone, because experiences of depression and anxiety and stress and loneliness are incredibly common among young people. And I know from my experience, when I was in high school, I thought I was the only person having these challenges. And once I started talking about it myself, I found out that so many people around me were dealing with similar things, and they were just waiting for somebody to bring it up.
What are some resources or services a teen can use if they have questions about mental health?
So I definitely would refer people to our mental health screening platform. So that's mhascreening.org. And that's where you can take these mental health screens or tests about different mental health conditions. You can learn more about them. We have, articles written in just plain language. So it's not like how a doctor would talk to you, it's how a friend would talk to you. We have podcasts where people talk about their experiences with these different challenges, and then self-help tools for yourself, recommendations for different online resources. And I think, like as I mentioned, we have, as part of these campaigns, we have one of our campaign is a back to school campaign. And on there, we have a lot of resources about how to talk to family and how to talk to adults about your mental health. So I think that our mental health screening program is a good place to start if you're just interested in kind of taking the first step of exploring what mental health means, the things that you think you might be struggling with, and then kind of getting a sense of what you want to do from there, whether that's working with a therapist for therapy, that's working with a psychiatrist. Some people work with, life coaches. There's all different. Some people do yoga, and some people do combinations of a bunch of different things. But I think getting started and trying to figure out where you are is a good entry point to doing a lot of the exploration that most of us have to do to find the combination of things that supports our mental health and well-being.
Okay, well, that's all for this video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And is there anything else you would like to say to our viewers?
No, just if you're struggling with your mental health, definitely reach out, take the mental health screen. But also if you're in crisis or you really need some extra support, crisis doesn't have to mean, you need to go to the hospital. It can mean that you're having a hard time, and texting crisis text line at home at 741-741 is a great resource for support if you just need somebody to talk to. So it's really brave to talk about your mental health. Mental health challenges are common, and there's a lot of support and hope out there for you.
Thank you all for watching. Bye.